What's up, everybody, and welcome to a review/discussion of Shadow of the Colossus, the remake, the remaster, the PlayStation 4 version done by Bluepoint. So we've both gone through the game.
Yeah.
We have both played this game before, so this is not like our first time going into this universe.
Not our first rodeo.
Well, that's right. I heard somebody posted a tweet, and they were like, I didn't know that you were supposed to be so good on your second rodeo. Like, you make a good point. Anyway, we're just going to be talking about this game in full spoiler mode. We're kind of assuming that you've played this game. It is a great game, obviously. Go out and play it if you have the opportunity. But we're going to be spoiling it, though. You know, the story in this game, what there is awesome, but it's not really a story-heavy game.
It's one of those classic, like, make what you will of it sort of things.
Oh, absolutely.
It's no, especially in the PS2 era, which it was kind of ripe full of the in the dawn before time, and you know, it's just like, oh my god, here we go. Here's like a hour-long like exposition before we get going. This one's just like, the credits start up, and you're just kind of riding in, and you see what's going on behind the scene, and then by the time the game starts, you're just like, go.
Yeah, I always think of it as a urban legend or like a fairy tale, something along those lines, where it's, or even a like cautionary tale, where it starts up and you just kind of go and you think it's one thing. It's got some twists along the way, but it's not very heavy in its exposition in any way, shape, or form. In fact, there's no English or anything in the game at all.
And it's one of those, too, where we're not really spoiling the story. That's why we kind of did our own little segment for it, but just like spoiling the like experience. And like the first time you fight these big bad things, like you're not supposed to exactly know what you're doing.
And just the surprise of what comes in. I mean, it's a puzzle game overall, and if you have the puzzle spoiled for you in a puzzle game, that's not great. That's going to really hurt your experience of it. But anyway, we can hop in. We can talk about kind of whatever we want. First, how do you think this game holds up?
Really well. I think it's like, at least as far as consoles go, especially since it's got the 4K support and all that. I don't know what mode you played it in, but I made it focus on frame rate.
I went cinematic.
Cinematic.
So I didn't touch it. It's one of the frame rate to me is one of those things where once I have the high frame rate, I'm like, oh, okay, now going back is awkward. But as long as I never turn that on, I don't notice it. I'm like, I'll do the cinematic.
I get cinematic as well. Did you use a filter or anything? That's one thing we can mention is that when this game, you can set like, basically if you think like Instagram or any sort of like photo editing program, you have all these filters that you can use. You can make it really bright, you can make it really saturated, you can make it like the contrast real big, you can make it nighttime basically.
I did see that. I messed with them, but I never actually
I only did it in photo mode,
just
because I was trying to get like some cool username backgrounds for PSN and just take some pictures. But obviously it looks way better. I mean, that's kind of the point of these.
Yeah, it looks really good. A lot of people are like, this is one of the best looking PS4 games. I don't feel that. Like, I think a lot of it is because they were probably a little held back by the fact that they were really trying to emulate the PS2 experience still. Like, this is very much similar to Crash Bandicoot, though Crash Bandicoot did mess with the physics, which people complained about. This game didn't really mess with anything gameplay-wise, for better or for worse.
That's where I was going with that, is that, like, as far as visuals go, it looks good on the ground, because obviously, especially with the angle of the camera when you're riding aggro, the horse, through the fields, like, you're seeing every single blade of grass, or, like, the detail needs to be there for that, because you're seeing that most of the game, and also each colossi is very detailed.
The hair, the fur, like anything.
It's stupid.
Anything that moves in the wind, the horse's tail, like looks so good.
The far away, like mountainscape and just like draw distance, obviously that's not to the tier of like Horizon and probably God of War when it hits and some of these other things that are right now. So you can tell that it's something that isn't a new game, but it looks new.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
They did such a good... Bluepoint is, I think, far and away the best remastering studio or whatever, port studio, whatever you want to call it.
It's hard to argue with it,
and
like, after this game.
when they start doing stuff like this, it just stands out so much. I love you unlock concept art and things on this.
Yeah.
And some of the concept art is the old game right next to the new one, and it is incredible.
That's when you can tell how good it looks.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can pull up like a YouTube video on your phone while you're playing and be like, oh, look at this old game. me being old enough to, I think it was in like junior year or something like that when it came out. I remember playing it back then, and still, it's one of those, we talked about it on a couple of the podcasts too. It's one of those where it looks as good now as you remember it looking back then.
I feel like that is the test of a good remaster, and I think they did a really good job with that.
But like you were saying, for better or for worse, they left in the, I won't say bad controls, but like difficult controls.
I was going to get to the controls. So before, what control scheme did you use?
Just the standard.
The one that it starts you with, which is like the new control scheme.
Yeah.
Okay. I swapped it to the classic controls, and I played like that, and then I forgot, and I didn't even notice it really until my second Colossi, that it's like half tank controls at certain points. Like when the camera angle changes, your forward and back change. And I forgot that happened. And then they have a third control option that is classic remapped, or not remapped, but it's like classic remastered or something like that. And it is the classic controls. So triangle is jump, and I'm going to talk about why I like that stuff. But the tank control part is gone, and it's just he runs where you aim him. And as soon as I turn that on, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Yeah. So, and I know other people who have played the game who tried the classic controls, and they're like, this is unplayable. And then they used the new ones, and they were fine. So did you not care to try the classic controls, or why did you stick with that one?
I left it on default, and I did the first Colossus, and I was like, this feels good, man.
It's good enough for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I played Last Guardian fairly recently, and I really like Ico, and I've always, even Breath of the Wild, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but that triangle is jump thing, people have such an aggressive negative to, and it's always made sense to me because it is the up on the controller. Like, anytime you're interacting with something above you in the game, it is triangle, and anything below you is X. And I've always thought that made sense in Last Guardian and Ico and Shadow. So when I swapped it and I'm in this world, I'm like, this isn't right to me. You
just depends on what you're used to playing, I think. Like, of course, shooting people are not going to like jump to be triangle. They want it to be X or no jump at all, sort of thing. But like, I guess platformers too, usually it's X, but a lot of times that's like an execute button or like a use or turn on, turn off sort
or
of button.
7 different other commands.
Yeah, like triangle is more of a like an inventory or a swap equipment sort of thing. So
stuff that you don't really have in this game. I mean, you can in the pause menu, but it's
I don't know if those controls swap the grab button, but it makes sense for jump to be triangle since you're already kind of doing the claw motion.
Is grab.
Okay. But since you're already kind of doing that claw motion with your right hand anyway to hold on, kind of makes sense for your thumb to be right there.
Yeah, I liked it. As soon as I changed it, I didn't have any complaints about the controls of the game. Now, the control, meaning, Wanderer, I believe, is the name that he goes by, but he's got kind of a slipperiness to him. He likes to roll around a lot when he gets hit.
Yeah, it's one of those too.
Like the controlling the actual character is still a little floaty and clunky from the PS2 days, which I appreciate that they didn't, because the game would be super easy. Like it wouldn't be as satisfying, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's why I like it, because obviously he's not even billed as like a master horseback rider, so it makes sense for aggro to be a little clumsy with like that combination.
Oh boy, is he clumsy.
Between wander and aggro to be a little like it's not like master and whatever horse. Like it makes sense that it's still a young boy. It seems like he's a teenager, maybe 20, something like that in the game. So he's not like the master horseback rider sort of thing. So that's why it makes sense. On the same token, like he's seeing this like 300-foot thing in front of him, so it makes sense for him to trip over himself a little bit. And I see what you're saying too, like especially if you're running like horizontally for the most part, like he kind of slides. It reminds me a little bit of Little Big Planet versus like a Mario game, where Mario or Mega Man or anything, like you jump and you land where you think you're going to jump, but in Little Big Planet you kind of have a hover to you, so you're more like the Princess Peach of the jumping. You've got and
like
I
a
think
little bit of a
that's more for like a dramatic kind of feel, especially when you're jumping off stuff, it seems like
I guess we can go into
too.
anything. Since this is a PlayStation 2 game, and I look at it a lot as a PS2 game just with a new coat of paint, because that's kind of what it is. man, the animations on this game hold up so well, and they are the reason I love the game so much. They're so charming.
Yeah.
They're in all of their games, just the way that they shift weight and the way that they trip over little things. And like sometimes the physics of it gets the better of it, and like things will happen, your character will flip when they shouldn't and stuff like that. But like just the way that he moves when he climbs and he swings himself to pull himself up, and
especially the guys too, if you're like climbing up something's arm and they try to swat you.
Yeah.
Because you'll see, instead of like a normal game where it would seem real rigid, where you would just be like, you would follow the arm basically. Like when he's swinging this way, your guy, you see his leg.
There's a lot of this like momentum that actually needs to carry through everything before
it really
gets to you.
Feels like that grab button that you're holding on to the entire time means something because you see the only thing that stays in place is Wander's arms, and everything else is just kind of like flapping in the wind or whatever is going on, and that plays into a big effect too when you're fighting like aerial colossi, underwater stuff. Like when there's a lot of physics involved, some of these are kind of stagnant, especially some of the first ones, just because they're slowly introducing you. But when you get into like the bigger, badder ones, or when you're hundreds of feet up in the air, then that's when you can notice the physics really come into play as well.
Yeah, and this game, it's interesting because so many game designers nowadays talk about how Shadow was the inspiration for their game, and I feel like you didn't see that until kind of the PlayStation 4. You know, like I feel like other people finally got it. So like for instance, in Final Fantasy 15, they have a lot of that demeanor with the animations of the character shifting weight when they're standing on a rock or something big, or you know, they have that weight shifting.
Horizon's got a lot of it too, with especially something charging at you and you like shoot its leg with a bow and you can see it trip over itself and topple. Like it feels like the kind of like PS3 era of things didn't really care about physics as much as like let's make it look cinematically
I agree.
Good, like pretty. And then after
PS4 is very animation and physics heavy. Breath of the Wild, a huge example of physics in the game and just the scope of it. Like I couldn't help but think of Breath of the Wild when, as soon as I got on my horse and I looked, and I'm like, this is like an empty Breath of the Wild game. Like they clearly looked at this game when they made that Zelda game. You know, like it. So I feel like it took them this long to finally kind of catch up to this game. Like that's how far ahead of its time.
Especially
just the scale,
with the
picturing the scale of that on the PS2. Like God of War 2, I think is the only thing I can think of that even remotely would rival it. You know?
Yeah. And same thing too if you look at like especially like the last Colossus 2, like that just feels like God of War. Obviously not the way it plays out, but you're like, man, I'm jumping from this thing's like back to its shoulder to its head. Like I wonder where they got the idea for that from. They just went, maybe if we use Greek gods and this really cool character, we can do all this stuff. But yeah, like going back to your physics, like that's why I like it so much, because he's not a master horse rider. He's not a master like you wouldn't want Ezio or I forget his name from Prince of Persia, but you don't want those guys fighting in this game because you just be doing like backflips all over him, and it would be a cool like level boss. But those games are more fun for those are more like the journey instead of the destination type of games. Like the boss fights are cool and all, but like it's the cool stuff you do. Like, oh man, I just like shimmied along this roof, did a backflip, fell on this guy, killed him, tossed a knife into that. Like you just have like cool stories like that. This one is just boss fights, boss rush. You don't have the in between,
and then exploring the empty world. So I do want to just bring up the empty world. Do you feel like how much do you enjoy that world? I guess is the statement
I like it. It felt a lot more varied now that they could use newer technology to differentiate the areas. It was real muggy. It was real foggy. It was real just. It felt dense, but like I'm talking about like weather effects in the old game or the original. This one, the area like the forests felt different. The area near the waterfalls felt different. The plains and the desert felt like everything had a lot more of like a personality now that it cleared it up and they could use PS4 tech with it.
I really liked it. Like it is empty and that's the point. But then there's these like really beautiful moments of you're riding on your horse and then a hawk swoops down and kind of flies with you and then flies away.
That bird.
Or you're walking through a cavern or whatever, and there's these lizards everywhere, and you get off and kill them and rip their tails off because you're a horrible person, and then they're just gone, and it's more empty.
I know they don't really have like weather effects so much like a GTA or something like that has now, But every now and then you'd get a nice little like part in the clouds and sun would hit down, so it'd be like a really pretty area, and then you'd go into a real ugly
Some
area.
of the forest area, yeah, they have deserts and forests and caves and city, like they have ruins and coliseums.
And it's much easier to differentiate that now, because back then it was you went to the area just to see the Colossus, but now you go to it to see the little beach side or that big bridge that you have to go down, and I think you fight 2 or 3 people along that route, and the waterfalls, like you go and you can like sit there for a second. I mean, it makes sense that this one's got a photo mode too, but you can sit there for a second and just kind of take in and just be like,
yeah, there's definitely a couple places where I just kind of stood there. Did you stumble on any Easter eggs or anything like that on your journey, or were you pretty
No, I was I don't want to make it sound like I was just trying to rush through the game.
I mean, it's not a long game.
No, I think it took me like 5 hours.
It took me 5 hours.
But that's because I was kind of getting lost on purpose, like, enjoying the landscape, sort of getting
An
lost.
hour of that was one Colossus, but I'll get there.
I wonder who's going to make your list. But yeah, I didn't run into any Easter eggs. No,
I found one in a forest.
It.
There was like a little ramp thing, and I went to it, and it was an underground cavern. And you actually get a trophy if you go to it, and it has the food that Trico eats in The Last Guardian. Was,
cool.
Like a little cave with his food all up in there. There's like glowing barrels that you feed him in that game. I thought that was really neat. And then, of course, just to bring it up, they added in these, I think it's 78 coins that you can find that are hidden throughout. I think I found 8 of them, maybe. They're scattered throughout
make a
hard
noise.
mode, and they make a really cool noise actually. But they're scattered throughout hard mode and normal mode and time trial. Like they're in certain things. And if you collect them all, you basically get access to a new weapon, which is kind of a reverse sword of the sword that you get. I guess it kind of tracks darkness instead of the light, and I think it hurts you, but it does more damage, something along those lines. Obviously,
it's like a double-edged sword. For
obviously, I didn't get it. Or I'd know more about it, but it's something along those lines.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, you get it because you appreciate the game and you want to, like, give it some of your time and just say, like, I got everything. Like, that's the main reason to get it. I don't think there's a big enough bonus.
Yeah, like there's no trophies tied to collecting the coins at all. There's nothing. Like, they didn't even announce that these coins were in the game. It was just a cool little hidden thing.
If it was something like a new Colossus or something like that would have made it. I would have done it in a heartbeat.
I would have done it.
I would have looked at the guide on how to pick them up, but then I just would have left the Colossus alone because it would have been nice. The game wasn't that old where I forgot how to fight them. It was just like...
There's a couple that I forgot.
If there were... Basically, if there's like 3 weak points on this Colossus, I might have forgot the second one. Like, how do I get from A to C? I forgot B, for the most part. But yeah, I remembered pretty well, actually. I was more surprised I remembered how to get to some people because it's...
I got lost a couple times for sure.
In the old game, it was easier to get lost because, like I said, every place kind of felt the same just because weather effects and particles and stuff like that back in the PS2 era weren't really... Like, that wasn't their thing. It was more like stories and gameplay. But it's still pretty easy to get lost. But now that things are... newer, the PS4 tech, you can be like, I know I'm supposed to fight the big snake in the desert. I'm not in the desert. I need to fix this. And then
from the hints that they're going to give you in the beginning, the riddles or whatever you want to call them. So let's do kind of our closing thought on just the game in general, and then we're going to go into our top 3 least favorite Colossus, and then our top 3 favorite Colossus.
Yeah.
My kind of closing thoughts on the game are I really liked it. I actually played it through this time just with my niece watching it, and she thoroughly enjoyed the experience. And she was, it's kind of got a twist going for it, and she was surprised by how the game kind of turned out. I will say this game is frustrating because things happen. Like sometimes the Colossus throws you off. Sometimes they won't sit still, and your stamina is running low, and you fall, and you have to like restart a whole section. But like as soon as you kill the Colossus and you go on to the next one, you forget any frustrating moment at all, and all you remember is this was awesome, this was awesome, this was awesome, this one was like that's basically why I think this game is so special. Is because people are so willing to be like, there's a lot of stuff that's annoying. Like the horse doesn't listen to you at all, and like all this stuff. But like you forget that because it was also the coolest thing you've ever done in a video game in a lot of respects. So, like, the only negative moments I have, and I'll talk about that as soon as we get to these bottom things, are, like, the angry part that stuck with me. There's only really one, and that's going to be my bottom Colossus. But, yeah, really, really holds up very well, and I hope we get Ico next.
I think, and this is, I'm not even going to bother repeating most of the stuff that you just said because you kind of hitting the nail on the head, but it was a really good time to put this out. It's sort of probably a secondary factor of why Breath of the Wild still gets as much attention. I know there's still some 2017 awards stuff that goes on and things like that where people are still pointing at that game. But the good part about it is like it's one of those experiences where you don't really want to be on the headset with a lot of people. I mean, yeah, something like your niece watching or like a friend.
Yeah, why it's not like she's like talking to me during it. We're just playing share playing it.
It's not a loud game. It's not. I mean, until you get under a behemoth like
yeah.
Titan,
See, I love when you grab onto something, the music just amps up. Oh, it's so good. Sorry, it's your turn.
But no, you're fine. Feel free to keep cutting in. But I think it's so good right now. Again, not only because it was a good game and they just made it, look like a today's sort of game, but also because we're in this loot box, multiplayer only hero shooter world where you just like have to constantly be connected and you're constantly watching out for stuff and listening for, whatever, ultimates going off or, just gameplay sort of elements of Fortnite or PUBG where you're listening for people. Like, you get to like just throw all that out and you go back to the single player experiences that kind of used to rule the gaming world. And it was one of those, like I said, if it's just you or if it's just someone sitting there watching and just kind of taking it in, because it's even more cinematic when you don't have to play, because obviously someone watching doesn't feel the frustration of, man, like I really feel like I turned there with aggro, but he didn't quite make that sharp turn.
Yeah, and I love the like kind of lock-on mechanic to make it more cinematic, where it can kind of focus on the Colossus and like camera might like spin around and lock on to him, but it's not like a lock on like a normal video game has. The camera just kind of pans and it stays settled on him, and your guy like perfectly fits in the frame. Or you can have it so your horse, it zooms out more and you can kind of see the horse. Like all that stuff is so good.
But it came out now, especially when it first came out too. Obviously, it kind of shook the landscape of video game design. But it came back out now at a really good time, and I think, I don't know, sales-wise, if it got a boost from some of that, like I was saying, like there's just multiplayer, and now you have this, which is just 5-6 hours, maybe upwards of like 10, 12 if you want to repeat or try some of the hard modes.
Oh yeah, you can definitely milk the gameplay in this with the time trials.
So,
for sure.
And like it's customizable enough to where like I kind of want to play it in night mode just to see what it's like. I played it in day mode just so I could see all the bristles of hair and all that stuff, just to kind of get the most out of the details. But it's kind of play it your own way with as many control schemes and filters, and like focusing on I want it to be a more cinematic experience, or I want it to look like today's games with the frame rate or the visuals or whatever. So I don't know. It's a really nice game, and I'm glad that they did it. Not only because it's one of my favorite games of all time, and one of our like combined, I guess, favorite PS2 games of all time. That pretty much everyone who's come over here, or at least on this show, would agree. I think it just came out at a really good time.
I completely agree, and for a good price.
Yeah,
I like. I can't believe they could easily charge $60 for this and no one would say anything, and they were like 40. So that was really cool.
And yeah, there's enough, especially in like the menus, there's enough like nods to the old game and digging up some of the old, like this is nice because PlayStation isn't as much the nostalgia machine as like a Nintendo is.
They're working on it.
Yeah, I mean they're getting there, I guess. But yeah, it's like the best remake I would say so far, just because it took all of...
That's tough.
It took all of the things... with the clumsiness of the character and difficulty of the controls and stuff, like you wanted to keep some of that. If you just made it Assassin's Creed controls, like I kind of said earlier, it wouldn't be as fun because it's not difficult. So with the difficulty of the game, matched by the controls and some of the other stuff going on, it's just it's about as good as it gets, really. I really don't think I could have asked for anything more out of them. Like if they were asking me like, hey, you played this game, here's what you remember about it, what would you do? And I would just be like, that.
You did it. Good job. All right, so let's move into our Colossus picks. We'll do our bottoms, and then we'll do the top, and then that'll be it for this.
Okay.
So let's start off with our number, basically 14.
16, 15, 14.
Well, 14, 15, 16.
Oh, you want to do it
And
that
then-
way?
yeah.
Okay.
So we'll start off with number 14, which is my most liked of my least favorite, I guess.
Yeah, it's just easier to say number 14. Probably.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
And this is, I guess, Phaedra. I wrote down their real names, but it is the horse. I think
Yeah.
it is the third or fourth Colossus, I believe.
Yes.
And-
it's not 5. I know that.
I don't like this one because this is kind of one of the first ones that you run into that does have a bit of RNG in the fight. You need it to do this one specific thing in the corner for a very long time, and you kind of need to run under and come up the other side and climb it. I've had instances where I make it just in time to not make the jump because he just starts to get up after that. And something else that is kind of a theme in these fights that I don't like versus ones that I do is the horse it feels useless in some Colossus fights, and it is amazing in some other Colossus fights. And in this one, it caused problems because I'd get out and I'd be like, "Hey, horse, come here," so I can get there quickly.
Yeah.
And then the guy's like, "Oh, you said something. Let me turn around and not continue
Well,
doing
to be
what I'm
fair,
doing."
he's a horse too, so he thought he was
He
being
thought I
yelled
was
at.
well, I was trying to ride the bigger horse, but so yeah, I just didn't feel like I was actually tricking it. It felt very video gamey for this part, where some of the other ones actually do feel like an AI is kind of, behind the works on those Colossus. But on this particular one, it really did feel like, okay, trigger the thing so you can go and kill it
Yeah.
and get on to the next one. So
That's fair.
definitely not one of my favorites.
There are a handful, and that's the biggest problem with this being a 2018 game now, is that we've been through the 20 years of, cue this, and then this event happens, and then do this, and the second stage of the boss fight happens. Like, we're used to those, trigger effects, whereas back then it wouldn't have been so kind of mundane and, played out. But
Yeah, and something I noticed that a lot of veterans of the game like about it is they're like, oh, it's not that bad, whatever, because they know how to trigger it. But when you forget what to do or it's your first time playing it, it does get frustrating that you don't know that it's supposed to do a specific thing, and maybe it doesn't and you don't see it or whatever, so you just never get it. So a lot of my negative ones have that kind of effect going for them. But
there's a weird thing in the game, too. I don't know if maybe you felt it, but it feels like there's a time limit to the fight, but there's not actually one, so that kind of frustrates me, me thinking way back when I first fought some of these things, where if I didn't trigger maybe the horse on the second or third time, I felt like time was running out, and I was going to lose the fight sort of thing. But
I
you
see
can
what you're
really,
saying.
you really have just all day to do it,
Yeah.
unless you're doing the hard mode. But yeah, it got, some of those things would be frustrating like that, especially, I just call them the dumb Colossus, or the Colossi, because there's some where you need them to really just do something that's not, hey, this thing's attacking me, or hey, this thing wants to stomp me and get me off, or get me off of its back, or just get away, sort of like if a fly was coming at me.
I like that
I
they
would
have different
start swatting at it.
personalities,
Yeah.
but this one in particular I just didn't buy as a personality. I
Yeah,
guess.
because basically you need the horse to go and peek over the side for a full minute,
and start,
so you can run all the way around. So he can do I call it the cat in a litter box sort of thing, He's shaking his legs. But yeah, it's like a legit full minute where you have to get it to look down, and you run all the way down or all the way back up the other side, and then jump over, and then have to run onto its tail, I think, is where you have to
and the
grab
worst
on.
part was playing through it on this time when he had one stab left. I got thrown off, and I was like, no, no, now he needs to be stupid again.
Yeah.
It's a little weird. So
Yeah, fall for the same trick a second time.
yeah, so that's my number 14. What do you got?
My number 14, Kuromori / the Gecko. This is Colossus number 8. This is the one where you have, I call it more like a Greek
It's like a
stadium or
pillar thing that
yeah.
you're in, yeah.
But he's the one that climbs up vertically, and you have to shoot his feet to make him fall off onto his back, and he just kind of wiggles there, and you have to jump. I thought it was fine, but it was the thing you're mentioning, gameplay mechanics and Colossi kind of being dumb and a few other things like that is your main focal points for these. Mine are the less dynamic fight, the least interested I am with him. Obviously, I'm not going to count like 1 and 2 really when I get into that, because you don't want the super mega Death Lord to be your first boss fight. Else, that's what Bloodborne's for.
Easy.
That's what Dark Souls games are for. So you don't want to like frustrate the player and piss them off and make them want to shut the game off, sort of thing. But yeah, when it gets past that, once you finally learn, how to take on some of these things, and you learn some of the advanced tricks and stuff like that. When it gets to just kind of hit it, it falls over, stab, 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 hit it, falls over, stab. Like that's kind of what this one felt like. The best part about this fight, at least, is when you do shoot its feet off and it's lying there on the ground, like you have this small window of opportunity where you can jump and just like free fall and like catch on the last little bit and really just save yourself like 20 seconds. But like I said, it's shoot the foot, it falls down, fall, grab the ledge, stab 3 times if you're lucky, run all the way back up, shoot its foot, jump down. Like it's a little too formulaic, and it doesn't get too dynamic, and that's halfway through the game.
I like that one because I think it's the first one where the environment actually matters.
Yeah.
Where you are like you're running around an environment while the other thing is also running around that like enclosed environment. I think it's the first time you do that. And I do remember the first time I shot, like when I played the game for the first time, when I shot it and it fell off the wall, I was like, that was pretty badass.
Yeah. The cool part also about that fight, not only that jump that you get to do right after it falls, and you get that kind of like small window of opportunity, like I said, and grab onto that very bottom ledge, and it makes you feel like sort of like an action hero. Not only that, but if you think about it, the boss is going vertically the whole time, and you're going horizontally, so it's just like a cool game. Like you said, like the boss has his own little path, and you have your own path,
you have like
and
a
they're like
spiral to go through, and he just goes straight up. I actually like that one. It would be in the middle for me, though.
But yeah, my biggest reason is, like, I feel like if it had changed somehow in the second half of the fight, like, I feel like what would be cool is if, like, maybe if the tower's a little bit shorter, obviously he couldn't knock it down, but, like, if the Colossus could knock the tower down halfway through, so now you're the one going in this direction and he's above you, sort of thing. I don't know. It would be cool just to make it a little more dynamic, but obviously I wouldn't expect him to change it for the remake. But,
right, yeah, that just.
But going back to thinking about how I would like the fight to be a little bit different. But yeah, that's mine. 14.
My next one is 15, and my awesome handwriting. I'm not even sure what this is, but Pelagia. I'm not sure if that's a G or an S. But anyway, this is the one where he has like these teeth on his head. You're in the water. You get into this little mini like Colosseum thing, and he comes up to you, and then
they call that
he
one
shoots electric.
The Poseidon guy.
Yeah, he shoots electric at you. And apparently you can like jump in the water and grab onto his back and climb him, but I always just ran and jumped on his front because that also works, and you can climb to the top.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to like race around his side, and then when he zaps, he stops for a second and swim under his foot.
Yeah, see, when he zaps, you can run and jump off the Colosseum and just grab his face and climb up to the top. So that's what I did. But anyway, on top of that, they try to give you a hint of what you're supposed to do with this one, because there's 4 of these like pedestals, and 2 of them are destroyed. And I think you're supposed to notice that 2 of them are destroyed and get the hint that you're supposed to get him to destroy the other one to kind of, get the fight going. But I was always just confused. And, like, there is a very weird choice that they made with this fight where once you climb him and you jump on top of that podium, he goes up on his legs, and then you can jump to his stomach and stab him. But his legs have grabs, like areas that you can hold on to. So my first instinct was, I'm going to jump onto his legs, and then he takes you underwater and kills you. And I'm like, why can you grab that? Like, I don't understand the choice to make his arms grabbable and climbable when all they do is kill you if you try to do that. And
well, especially since he goes through the animation of climbing up on the thing. Usually, like, if you come from a God of War stance, too, like when someone pulls like an appendage up, you want to slice the appendage.
Yeah, hands are weak spots in a lot of this game. But not here. Like, you're just trying to get to his stomach.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have to do that really awkward, like, stand on top of him, hit the teeth thing, and move him. Like, it's just a little clunky and weird.
The main negative I have against that one is that you manually have to control the Titan, which it's good and bad. Good that it's different because every other Colossus, I keep calling them Titans, every other Colossus is kind of self-guided. You're waiting for him to do the thing so you can jump here and do that. Like, they're automatic. And this one is, if you stand on him, obviously the teeth are big and obvious enough to where you might go, oh, what do these do?
Yeah.
But if you just stood there and you're like, where do I stab this thing? I already took out his chest, so what's next?
Yeah, it's a little strange. And on top of that, it's one of the only areas in the game where you use the sword swing.
Sure.
Like, you don't actually... You do a lot of stabbing.
Yeah.
You, like, swing that sword, like, 3 times in the game. And this is just one of the random instances where you actually use the sword swing.
Yeah.
So that is my number 15.
Really pretty area, though. That when I was talking about
also
how,
another area where your horse is just irrelevant.
Yeah.
You can just walk out of the area.
Where I was talking about going from PS2 version to this version, and it just being like obviously night and day difference as far as graphics go, but like you could actually look at this area and just be like, wow, this is real pretty, because you have to kind of tuck back in there to find that guy. My number 15, Bazaran / the turtle or a crab, whatever you want to think of him as, and that is Colossus number 9. To kind of fit the theme of what I did
Todd's
with my
a funny boy. You text me.
with my number 14, sticking to that same theme. This one is very obvious when I think this opening cinematic, when the Colossus is here, sort of cinematic that all of them get. You see the little geyser shooting up, and you're just like, what do I do with this? The boss fight is, while the turtle or crab, whatever you want to call it, itself is really cool looking and really awesome. It's just, as soon as he gets to it, it pops the foot up, boom, and then you're on its back. Like, it's incredibly simple, and like I said, this is actually the middle part of the game, and you feel like it should have just been a little bit more dynamic. If they wanted to go full turtle or crab mode, like give it some pincers or something like that, and I don't know, make it a little more variable. This one was just wait for the slow lumbering guy to walk in front of the geyser that's like always going off. So it's not like the timing of it isn't even difficult. And shoot its foot, knock it over, sort of thing. It felt like that could have been Colossus number 2.
Yeah, to me, this is a perfect example of when you were like, it feels like you're timed on some of these, but you're not.
Yeah.
Like, for me, when I was playing it this time, the geyser went off, and I didn't remember that I needed to shoot all of his feet. So, like, it went off, and he was wobbling, and I was like, oh, what do I do, whatever. And then, like, it stops, and then he lands back down, and then he just waits on the geyser until it goes again. I'm like, you're a stupid turtle. Like, why would you do that? Whereas a lot of the other ones that have like faults that you kind of exploit are in them trying to kill you. And in this one, it's just you're stupid and standing over the geyser twice.
Well, too, he doesn't even, like, I would understand too if they wanted to make it where it's dormant and then he stands over it and you get him to stay there, because obviously he'll keep walking towards you if you don't. If you get him to stand there and then it has to hit, like once he's already standing over it, but it could be like fully active and he's like, oh, and then walks through it and now he's levitating. And on top of that, he's got like this big Destructo laser beam.
That's random.
It's just kind of weird because like you have to use the horse to get away from the beam, but then like aggro is useless because you don't like use him to make a difficult jump, or he's not a fast enough Colossus to where like you need to outturn him or something like that. It's just you have to just dodge the laser beam. So just a weird mix of abilities and ways to take him down. And I feel like if you're going to make the turtle or the crab, like give it some water elements that are more than just like a geyser. Like if it's going to, like this should be the one flipping on its back, not the gecko sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know, make it just more, it was just a little too simple, which
I get it. For having a huge turtle, they could have done a lot of cool stuff.
And I get the, sort of the breaks, like you have a really difficult one or a really just like big aerial fight or water or something like that, then you want to relax. Like you go through sort of like waves, so it's not just like building the whole time, and it's not like you have all your cool guys up front sort of thing, like the pacing, I guess. But I don't know. I felt like, and this was, like I said, I chose number 8 before this, so this was back-to-back, just like, right in the middle of the game. But
I like that we don't have any crossover yet.
Oh, no.
It's neat. My number 16, my least favorite, the only Colossus that I actively don't like in the game, like I just hate, is the 15th Colossus, which is Argus. And this is the one that you fight in, like, the Colosseum.
Yeah.
That, once again, you leave your horse behind and you go into this Colosseum to fight it. And it starts off really cool because it's like this huge Colossus and then and it's a Colosseum. So you're like, oh, this one's going to be an actual
Nowhere
fight.
to run sort of thing.
And then, it devolves into, well, I clearly need to get up there.
Yeah.
How do I do that? So I run out of the Colosseum. I'm running around. I'm trying to see if there's, like, something to get up above. He's got such an array of attacks that are all kind of confusing. He has one where he swings his arm, and it looks like it would hit the bridge.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm constantly trying to bait him to do that and hit the bridge, and he won't do it. And I'm just shooting arrows at him constantly to, like, keep his attention.
Yeah,
and
he's got a
butcher
swing with
knife
his
type thing,
he's got a swing with his right arm. I think another swing with his left. He's got a stomp. He's got all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and then
you need him to do one.
you need him to stomp a particular set of platforms on one side. I don't think the other side works. And on top of that, like, he stomped the ground next to it and didn't hit the platform when I was there. And I'm like, this is exactly what I mean when I don't like the ones that, like, you have to make them look stupid multiple times in a row to get it to work. And, like, you have to do that. Then you need to get up and you need him to do another specific attack where he breaks the thing.
Yeah.
And then you can jump onto him. But sometimes mid-jump, he just decides to turn around and you fall all the way down. And then he needs to be stupid again and get you back up every time. Like, it was so
toughest
frustrating.
part for me was when you're all the way up above and you need to jump on his head. Because it feels like he's a lot closer than he is, and then he'll be like, "Ooh, what's that?" And then
and you just miss. I did that jump like 3 or 4 times. And then the other thing is, I was shooting him with the bow constantly because this was the fight I think it was like 40 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And I was just shooting him with the bow to get his attention so he'd do the correct move constantly. I stabbed the dude twice and he died. That's how much bow damage I did to him because he just wasn't listening to me in the way that I wanted.
He's probably the most ADHD out of the group. As far as just like his attention span is just...
I have it written down as it feels like I'm fighting a giant version of my horse. It doesn't listen, it doesn't cooperate, and I need it to do a specific thing to progress, and it's just not doing it. I'm like, what are you doing?
I feel like, and it's obviously not the biggest vertical scale of the fights, but it's the biggest vertical when there's like a free roaming Colossus, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, he has to do very specific things, and when he's got a move set of like 5, and you need move 1 to happen here, move 3 to happen here, and 5 to happen, like, you know, it's tough.
Yeah, and this is another one where I talk about, the horse isn't there, and on top of that, people who play the game a lot are like, it's not that hard because they know how to bait these moves out of him. And I don't. He stomped, the platform didn't go up because he just missed it, and I was like, well, that's not right, let me try something else. And then I figure out, oh, no, that is right, I just... didn't realize,
Yeah, like
he was just
the start
off.
of the fight and the end of the fight were always easy for me. I feel like once, it must be like an AI thing, but like once you progress like a certain height or level on the stadium that you're fighting him on, it's just like his AI bugs out and he doesn't quite understand, like, oh, he's up there, I need to walk this way, because unless you're shooting arrows at him the whole time, he just kind of wanders around. Like, it's almost... Yeah, I don't know. It's like he's lost his mind or something. He's like the grandpa or something. Like, no, over here, grandpa.
But yeah, he's just, out of all of them, I think he breaks the experience for me the most. And I just can't get behind that particular Colossus. But all the other ones I at least enjoy, something about. But him, I don't like him at all. How about you? What's your bottom one?
My number 16 is Colossus 16, Malice, the Titan. My biggest reason, and as soon as I got a minute into this fight, a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, I fucking hate this guy.
I still don't know which one is this?
The very last one.
Oh, okay.
The very last
really?
one. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which doesn't make sense. Like, I really like the fight itself, but getting to him is such the biggest pain in the ass. Like, it can be. There's an asterisk there.
Yeah.
It can be a really big pain.
You get knocked down, and he's like laying there for 4.5 minutes. You're like, all right, dude, you're all right.
It's one of those too. Like, you have to hit like the pro streamer like sequence of events for it to not just bone you over and over and over. And it's one of those too where you get knocked down, you'll go flying. I mean, just absolutely flying, like it was this, like Smash Brothers, and you were at 200%. Like, you just go flying, and you get back up. Yeah, I think you can take like 3 or 4 hits depending on how far you traverse when you get airborne. But it's one of those, like, man, if you just miss the timing by a split second, homing missiles.
Yeah.
This is probably number 2 on my video game sins list, like homing things, especially when he's just sitting there. And it's not one of those where it's like the projectile missed you. Okay, now you have 5 seconds to run. It's just like, boom, boom.
Are you
boom,
not behind
boom,
the wall?
boom.
You're getting launched.
Yeah.
Like, if you are not hiding, he knocks you back. And then the worst part is when he knocks you back to like a previous area,
Yeah.
like you fall down the
Yeah.
hole and you're like, now I gotta climb all this again.
And the splash damage is huge on it. The AoE is huge on it. So, like, seriously, if you do not hit almost a perfect run or a path through there, you'll just get boned the whole time.
Yeah.
Luckily, at least with this one, you can just start back at the fight. And like I said, the annoying part is the ride or the walk up to him. So it's not like you get 90% through the fight and you have to start over. It's you get 0% through the fight and have to start over. But man, it's such a pain in the ass. And I hate homing projectiles like that. And
so what about the actual climbing the Colossus?
I like it, but this one, I don't remember it so much in the original version, but this one was the windows that you have to get from back to left arm to left hand to right hand to shoulder to head. Like, I like the stamina test, and that was good because so many times I would just get it in that last like bit of stamina. Like it made me feel real good. But it was one of those where the jumping mechanic really failed me a lot. But
yeah, sometimes he's got like a little weird of a torque in his hand, and you jump, and your character just jumps the wrong way. Like, what are you doing?
And it's one of those, especially going from left hand to right hand in that fight, I missed it so many times. And it was one of those, like, the camera was here, and I'm trying to make him jump from here to here while hanging, and it's just, any platformer is bad when you get to that point. Like, it's tough. That's the same thing I would do in Uncharted and die a billion times, same thing I do in Assassin's Creed and fall off roofs, Prince of Persia, like, all these games, so it's not just Shadow. But when you're dealing with, like, the camera's over here, you're crossing like X and Y planes that the game can't handle. That's when it gets kind of difficult. And boy, was I getting frustrated.
Yeah, I did it, I think, on my 3rd try, but he was my first and second game over of the game. Like, you get there and then you just fall by. I give him a bit of a pass just for the sheer scale and spectacle of him. That being said, he's still like in consideration for my list as well.
But yeah, like, it's once you get past that just hell run. I mean, I compare it to probably what the guys who stormed like beaches of Normandy went through in World War II. Like, it's that bad. Like, you're just barrage of just fire missiles. And like I said, it's not one of those in typical games where you dodge the big thing. Okay, here's 10 seconds where I have to sneak to the next thing. It's just a constant. Just go.
If he can see you, he just shoots it.
Yeah. Boy, does that suck. But yeah, once you get into the actual swing of the fight and you're climbing and jumping from spot to spot, and especially that part too where you're on his right wrist and you have to shoot his shoulder and then he stops and then
I remembered that one because I got stuck on that my first time playing it, and so as soon as I got there, I'm like, I know what to do.
I can remember for like an hour just being like, why? I get like a half second I can't do it. Like, what's going on here? I know where I have to shoot. But like, as soon as he starts to do this,
as soon as he starts moving, you're done.
As soon as he starts to turn, you let off the grab so you can stand up, and then you just wow.
Yeah, he's like, whoa, are you trying to do something? Let me mess it all up.
But you can tell from that fight too. It's just like, this is where the God of War guys went. I know what I need to make. Yeah. So yeah, it gets a nod. And like I said, this is numbers 14 through 16, but still, I don't hate any of these. And I didn't have as much trouble with most, if not all of these, as I did the original time when I was much younger and dumber and not used to this sort of thing. But yeah, they're still all cool, but man, just that run to him just kills me.
That makes sense. I like
literally.
Still no crossover. All right, let's do our top 3, our favorite ones. We'll go through those. My number 3 is Cenobia, the ram that you climb the pillars and it knocks down a pillar, and you climb the next pillar. Yeah. Call it a ram because it rams thing, but yeah, it definitely acts like a hyperactive dog.
There's a couple enemies, by the end of the game where you get like they're just in that headbutt mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is by far the most aggressive, I think, of all the.
He's the fastest
Colossus.
too. I feel like
probably
he's like sprinting and jumping over stuff.
So I like this one because it has these set pieces that you were talking about. The other ones, it has the cutscenes where the building's collapsing, but it's not fully a cutscene because you can jump out of it. Very like Uncharted feeling moments, and you're knocking down all these pillars and being hunted until eventually it gets crushed, and then you get to hunt him, and he's running for his life, and you're chasing after him. Like, I love the dynamic of that fight when it turns the corner and all of a sudden he's scared of you, whereas in the beginning he does not give a shit. Like, he's just trying to run you over as fast as possible. I really like that whole fight.
Do you ever jump down onto his back? And
I rode all the way back to the start before I stabbed him because he wouldn't stop moving. I was like, all right, whoa, all right, whoa, all right. And then I finally got to the beginning and he like calmed for half a second and I was like, stab, stab, stab.
That's one of those fights where I guess you called it RNG, so that'll be a good term, I guess. But if you get like a stupid version of him where he like just doesn't want to ram his head into the tower that you're on or anything like that, it can suck. I've seen people run into that where he's just kind of like...
I always shoot at him to get his eyes red. When his eyes are red, that's when you know he's going for you.
Also, the cool part about that fight that I like is that since you're coming up to it on the ground, you're just looking at like, oh, pillars. Like, this is sort of like a Greek looking area. Like, you don't understand, like, I can be on top of these and they're going to fall over. So obviously he shows up and he's just sprinting down the stairs at you. And you're like, I want to jump on that. And then like you slowly get higher and then higher and then higher. And then you're like, I get it.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So it's sort of like a maze in that regard.
So I thoroughly enjoy that doggy man, which is interesting. Not a dog person. There's some dogs on this list. What's your number 3?
Number 3 is Hydrus / the eel. This is number 7. And this is one, if I had to make a rating for Colossus or Colossi in original game to now, he would have shot up the list the most, and I think that has to do with where water effects are.
It's true.
And technology, basically.
I like
ramping
him a
up.
lot more this time.
But when you first make him pop up and you just barely grab onto his tail and then you get dunked underwater and you're like, okay, this is 5 seconds. 10 seconds, like, am I going to drown? Like, did I do the right thing, sort of thing? And then he pops back up, and it feels like right when he emerges again from the water, sort of like a whale, it feels like. That's when the music kicks in. You're just like, because it does that cool
when
effect.
It goes in the water, the music kind of
fades I was going to say, that's one of my favorite things in games, or action-y games, too, is when you get that, like, water in your ear kind of effect where it sort of dulls it out, and then, like, it emerges again, and the music kicks back up. And then, it was really cool just to, like, go along his back, and, he's going to dip again. So it was just one of those time elements, or timing elements, but it was really cool in the way that it did that. And I liked having that all water fight because, like I said, it felt like, am I going to drown sort of thing? Whereas the one that you mentioned, I think they call him Poseidon. There's this little nickname, but you don't ever feel like you're going to drown because it's either you dip in for a second to swim around him, or you grab onto his foot and he dunks you. So it's like a 0 to 100 thing. Like, you're either for sure drowning or not. But this one is like you're holding on, your stamina's going down. You're like, oh shit, I messed up. I didn't think about something. And also too, the start of that fight, you just get to an empty lake and you're standing around. And you're like, where is it? Like, usually I can see it by now. You're just like, okay, I'm bored, whatever, and you jump in, and then it just shows up, sort of thing. So it was really just cool because that was one of the few Titans where you just get, or Colossus, where you see it like menacingly like swim towards you, and you're just waiting. You're waiting, and those are some of my favorite parts of the game, where you're just kind of like your hands are kind of shaking your way. You're just waiting for that one moment, and then you get it.
That's true. I think if I made a top 6 list, like 4 of those would have those moments in it. I also like that this one is one of the first ones with an actual defense with the electric, that you need to stab out its defenses before you can go offensive on it,
and
which is cool.
when you're riding a big thing that dunks itself into water, and it's got electricity. You're like, this isn't a very good combination. I'm like,
Yeah,
should
it's
I
a
be
little
here?
confusing.
Like, I would just pack my bags and go. But yeah, number 3 is the eel.
My number 2 is, I guess, Phalanx.
The phalanx?
Yeah, the sand bird eel thing. I don't know exactly. Yeah, but it flies for some reason. So this one has those moments that you were talking about. This one's awesome. This is one of the ones where the horse matters a lot, which I really like. I like when I have this relationship with the horse where I don't like it in the open world a lot of the time. It's frustrating me, whatever. But when it does what I want in a boss battle, I can forgive it. Yeah. And this one, when you do that perfect jump, it comes out of the sand. You shoot its weird little bag things and it crashes. Yeah. And it comes out of the sand and you're like, I know what to do. And you start getting close. The music's ramping up. And then you jump and it's like full shadow theme going. And you climb up it and do the stabbing. Like, doing this fight perfectly, where you jump it the first time you grab on, you climb up, you stab them, you move to the next weak point.
40 minutes of missing and rolling around in the sand. Yeah.
Oh gosh. You jump up, you stab the first weak point, you run to the second weak point, stab that, he goes into the sand, and then you do it again, you stab the second one and the third, and it's over, and you did it perfectly. I think it is the most satisfying run of any of the boss fights. And it's also interesting, like, he doesn't really have an attack. Like, he's not trying to kill you. He's just doing his own thing,
one
and you're
defense
a jerk.
is if you hold on after you are on top of him and you stab the weak points, he plunges, like, just almost vertically down into the sand, and it'll kill you if you're still holding on. If you
really?
If you don't let go.
I never tried that. That just seemed like a bad idea.
Yeah, like
once,
you're like
once
right
the
here,
weak point closes up, I'm like, I think I should get off this.
He hits like a certain like turbulence, I guess, and if it's going too fast, even if you hop off, I think you'll just die. Just one of those like speed impact to sand.
But yeah, this guy is just, and it's the one that they like to show. Besides the third Colossus, they really like the third Colossus, but it's one that they love showing in like promotional stuff. Yeah, and it's obvious to see why, because it takes advantage of that lock-on camera to the Colossus so well. And there's another one that does it really well too. But so that is my number 2.
Number 2 is Avion, the bird.
In the water area?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's Colossus number 5. Yeah, this is the one where you're in the lake and you have those little like pads that you can stand on. And yet again, this is probably the most, like I said a minute ago with the eel, you're standing there, you're waiting, and it's one of those, like, you feel like you've seen it in like the action movies or anything with like a plane in it. You're like, wait for it. Like, if you do it too early, you look stupid. You might get hurt, actually. If you wait too long, I think you just like blows you past.
I killed this guy in one cycle on my playthrough, and I felt like such a boss.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
But man, this is probably the biggest instance of not only what I just mentioned, but too, when the soundtrack goes from 0 to 100, when he's making that descent and you're just seeing this very large creature swooping right at you, and when you first catch on and the music just just cuts on,
you're kind of taught to run away and hide when it's doing its attack or figure out something to do. And this one, it's like, no, you fight back. In this one, you just jump on it.
Yeah, this was the first one, especially because it was Colossus number 5, and it's so early in the game where you wanted to charge directly at you, like with the Mammoth number 2, like you wanted it to run away from you so you could.
Yeah, a lot of them's tricking it, but this one you're not really tricking it.
This is one of those, and it feels kind of tense too, because you just have like a little bow and a little sword, and there's this like 500-foot bird swooping down at you, so you're just kind of digging in and just planting your feet. You're like, well, this can end one of two ways. But yeah, I like it because you have to jump and you grab on, and then switching between like the wings and stuff. And that was the first point in the game where you get in the air, and just the wind effects alone, like that made you feel like, man, if I let off this R2 for me, or R1, if I let off the grab button, like, am I just gonna go like soaring through the sky, sort of thing? So like, I don't want to let go. This is one where the stamina meter was always like towards the bottom for me. So yeah, I remember from the original, but this one again, when I couldn't remember what number he was, but when I got to the area, saw the pads, I was like, I know what's gonna happen here. And sure enough, Bird's just minding his own business, shoot him a couple times, and he gets pissed, and I'm like, here we go.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those along for the ride. And yeah, the soundtrack made it awesome, sort of like I said about the eel. when he emerges from the water and the sound cuts on. This one is as soon as you grab those wings and he takes you up, music. Awesome.
I want to throw out a real quick honorable mention, just kind of because it plays into the last one that I did with the sand.
Yeah.
It's the other sand one where his eyeballs pop out and you're on the horse once again and you shoot the eyeballs. And I really like that one as well. But
maybe think of Tremors too. And that one is the one where even if you just have the worst time with aggro, somehow the controls don't feel bad.
In that one, I don't know if it's because it's rounded and there's not like rocks for him to trip over and be dumb. He works really well there.
And I think, at least for me in that fight, I make very good usage out of the lock on to Colossus button.
Yeah, it's
and that
so
makes
cool.
It,
it's so cinematic.
That makes it so much better because you can just naturally turn around on the horse and shoot at him versus trying to do that, like force the camera to do it, which would be interesting.
My number one, I'm realizing why all my English teachers hated me because I'm reading my handwriting. I'm like, is that a B or is that an S? I don't know. Colossia, that's what we're going with. This is the fire dog monster that you go there. There's these 4 torches and he's once again really aggressive. He's basically another version of the other one that I really like. And he's super aggressive. He's charging into you, all this stuff. But this one's interesting because there's a bottomless pit next to you. And then on the other side, there's like a kind of a coliseum similar to the one that you fight the,
like a cliff.
the gecko type thing in. And you get him to knock down the fire. And if you wait long enough, the voice is like, he doesn't like the fire. He's afraid of the flames.
And you can see him too. The first time he hits it, he kind of like scours back. So like
his animations are probably my favorite out of all of them. But you pick up that torch, and all of a sudden he is terrified of you, and he cowers in fear and backs up. And then you throw him off the cliff.
Yeah.
And this is what I really like about it is then it's like a new fight. It's like another stage to the fight where you're stabbing at him, you're trying to get on top of him, and then you get on top of him, and he can lead you back to the starting point of the fight, but he's unarmored, so it's like another stage of the fight. So I really liked this one because it had that hunter-prey switch. I really liked the gimmick that he was scared of fire because we didn't really see any other Colossus that had a fear that you needed to use, and just there was a lot of tactics and stuff in this game, and also it's another one where you can kind of master it, and it feels really good to not feel like you're running for your life, but feel like you are hunting him, because it does keep flipping back and forth in that. But I really like the stages and the set piece type thing that they set up with this particular one. He was my favorite my first time going through, and he was still my favorite going through this time.
My honorable mention, and I think I'm doing it just so I don't cross over too much with you as well, but the Knight, I think he's naturally the tallest one. Maybe 16 is the tallest one because it's like built on a mountain sort of thing. But he's the tall, lanky one with the huge hammer, and that's the one where he slams it down and you run up. And I just always thought that was cool because it was sort of along the same lines as what you're thinking of. You're using its strength against it, sort of thing. I really would have liked that with 15 as well if they had given you the option to run up, but that was more like a dagger sort of thing. Yeah. But with that long, huge club and just running up that and then starting to fight him was always just kind of cool because, I mean, it just kind of naturally made that long bridge where you could run up, and I don't know, really dug it. But number one, and it's one you already mentioned, but I didn't want to jump into it.
This is our first crossover out of
Phalanx,
all of this,
the snake.
I knew
snake.
that was your number one too.
I think the week before it came out, I had mentioned that that was my old favorite at least, and
well, that gave us the idea to do this list. You were talking about it, and I was like, I think I liked this one, and then like the next day, I think you were like, why don't we just like do a list? I was like, okay, we can do that.
But for everything that you mentioned, but I think the reason it's number one for me is because it combined, I think, every gameplay element of the game. It combined the bow to shoot the sacks, combined aggro because you had to ride up to it and you get that. I compare it to like the old westerns where it's a guy on a horse and the train's beside him, and you're trying to make that last leap or something like that. That's what I always get out of it, and I think the desert kind of helps it with that scenario. But jumping on it, so you get aerial combat, you get the sword stab, and then you have to jump off in the last second and then do it again. Like it combined air, ground, horse, bow, sword. Like I feel like that should have been the last one because you don't really. I mean, I guess you use the bow to shoot 16's shoulder, but it felt like the natural kind of way for these types of games to end is because you use everything that you learned in the game.
Yeah, I do agree. I think the last one is weird because they clearly went with, and I always think of it as it's a PS2 game.
Yeah.
Like, if you think of it as a PS4 game, it does seem weird. But as a PS2 game, you're like, that thing is huge, oh my gosh, because you're waiting for them to get, progressively bigger and bigger. So the 16th one makes sense to me on the PS2 because you've probably never seen anything like that to that point. But now that we've had scale in games, it feels weird. You're like, well, why isn't the one that tests all my skills the last one?
But that's one of those where aggro... Like, I can understand people's frustration. It is not a very easy horse to navigate with, and sucks. a lot of the fights that you mentioned too, you get right up to it with your trusted pal, your horse buddy, the only person you can talk to really that's not like an evil deity in that area. Yeah, or that too. Like that's the only person you have any sort of like communication with, sort of thing. You get right up to the fight, and it's like, oh, this broken pillar is sitting here. I guess only you can go inside. And it's like, when I was like, okay, it's just me. Like, even if he just kind of sat there for most fights, I wouldn't care. But it's cool to have like your buddy. I almost wouldn't mind if they had a co-op player mode where someone could control aggro and someone else could be
I will say that opening cinematic is always weird to me. The one that's like from the perspective of the horse just running in the field. Because the first time it came up, I thought it loaded my save.
Yeah.
And I sat down and I was like, my character's invisible. What's going on?
But I think 15 feels like the peak of the game. But 16 is just like, hey, this is twice as big as anything else, and it shoots fire, and it's like, here's the evil deity sort of thing. But I don't know. Like, I just really thought he would be the best.
Yeah, he's cool. I don't think he really has any negatives. Like you said, it's a good bonding experience for the horse, which is really good for later in the game. That's why I like the horse ones. Like, I think there are too many where you leave the horse behind because bonding with the horse is important in this game, and I don't mind leaving it to go underground to certain ones because that makes sense. But
like
it's weird. Like I wouldn't want him, the dog one with the fire. That makes sense.
I wouldn't want him fighting against that big Viking dude either because he's just smashing everything. And
sure, but like there's weird ones where the horse isn't there, like the Colosseum. Like the only reason they got rid of the horse is so he has to do that dumb stomp. Like, just let me jump up there. You know. So, I don't know.
But this was like, if anyone wanted just a couple-minute experience, like what is Shadow of the Colossus? I don't have time to play it, or I'm not interested in platformer puzzle. That's the one where, especially if you watch someone who's professional Shadow of the Colossus player or something
all
like
those
that.
Professional Shadow players.
Or you tune into Evo, I guess, and see Shadow. No, but like if you see someone who did like an awesome like hard mode run of this, that's the one to watch for sure. That's the one where I would take a clip of and be like, this is Shadow of the Colossus.
I agree with that, because as much as I like the dog one and all that stuff, I like those because they're different than the other ones. They give you a different sense of gameplay and you're, the set pieces and stuff that you don't have with the other ones. But this one is just perfecting what they've had.
Yeah, I definitely really give points to the ones where you're looking at it, you're like, there's no weak point. What do I do? And it's like, I've got to think outside the box. And wait, why did he jump back when that fire hit?
Yeah, I like that, torch. Except for that dumb one with the teeth. But anyway.
That one was a little too painstakingly obvious. It was like, hit the shiny glowing tooth. And like I said, I think if that had been automatic and they had just kind of done something else with them, or different weak spots or something like that, like, I don't know. But yeah, there were just a few too, going off the worst three, that were just like, just do the basic thing, go kill it.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot that you could put lower on the list, just like the first one and stuff like that, just because they are tutorials for. There's no actual tutorial really in the game. Like they tell you how to jump and climb, and then they're like, and here's a boss fight. Yeah. So like they teach you how to roll and stuff like that.
But the cool thing is there's no like HUD and stuff either really. The cool thing is like, want to know where to go? Hold your sword up.
Yeah, that's such a good gameplay.
Want to know where to stab it? Like, hey, you might have died to this thing a couple of times. You can't figure it out. Hold your sword up, and it'll show you the bright blue point. And a lot of them made sense, too. It was just like, hey, this big Viking dude's poking down, looking at me. Oh, he's got a beard.
Yeah, he's really good. I like that one a lot.
A lot of things make sense. Yeah.
So yeah, I like that our list was so different. That just shows everybody's experience is so different with this game, and everybody thinks it's so special for their own reasons, which is awesome.
But we at least have to agree on the snake.
I think most people would. I think if you were to ask most people, in fact, let's try it. Go ahead and leave your list. You can do the whole list if you want of your favorite Colossus down below. You can post everyone, or you could do like we did and do a bottom 3, top 3, whichever you want to do. But that's it for this spoiler discussion review of Shadow of the Colossus. Spoilers, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. Game of the year.
So far, yeah. I mean, I'm always curious for like Game of the Year outlets that do allow like certain things like that, because I've seen like Last of Us Remastered wins Game of the Year, and it's like a little weird. Like, is Shadow gonna get some Game of the Year victories? I have to imagine.
I think they honestly, as far as remasters, remakes, the category, they just need to make one for these Game of the Year
Best
award.
remaster. Yeah. I would love that because it might entice people to go a little bit further, do kind of the Switch stuff where they're like, oh, it's the game and it's remastered, but we added a whole nother mode, or we added all these characters or all this stuff. So that'd be cool.
I am kind of
this
joking.
one, leave it alone. You're good.
I am kind of joking when I say Game of the Year, but I mean, it's really not that far off. And
I mean, I think it's the highest
game,
reviewed game right now.
Yeah.
So.
And if like the God of Wars and the stuff just kind of do average, and maybe you can make a case for Game of the Year, but yeah, it's kind of weird to be like this game that was before, but really plays and looks well now. Like, oh, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Sort of a weird thing, but these things are getting close to the point now where, like I said, this feels like a PS3 game that got remastered. As far as this looks good, draw distance, like you can tell that it's old.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't get like, it's not like they spent 10 years doing this either, sort of thing. But they did. Really awesome job. Feels like a PS2 game. Looks like a PS4 game.
It's a good way to
feels like the old game
a
lot. So they didn't like try to do something, recreate the wheel or anything like that.
Yep. So that is it for this discussion. Thank you so much for watching. We will speak with you next time.